everyone said horror films were dead. People don't like them anymore, don't want to see them. The early 80s, I started a company called Palace with my partner Nick Powell. We're all in our early 20s, we're all film nuts. We all work 24 hours a day, none of us ever really cared about anything but movies. It was very, very early days of video. And Nick asked me, he was ex-Virgin, I used to be a partner of Richard Branson, if I would be interested in starting a label based on the kind of movies I showed in my cinema. I ran and owned a cinema called the Scala Cinema in King's Cross. It was a repertory cinema, we changed the program every day. We showed movies like Eraserhead, we showed films like the John Waters films, we showed Fassbinder movies, we showed Cocteau films, Kurosawa films, and strange movies. Those kind of movies weren't really being distributed on video, so Nick asked me to go to festivals and see what's around, see what you like to put on the label. I picked up John Waters' catalogue, I bought Mephisto, I bought Fitzcarraldo. But unfortunately, we realised that the kind of audience that was there for videos in those days, in the early 80s, was really not very sophisticated. People were selling videos in those days. People were buying them from garage, from gas stations, from all sorts of like dingy places. Real under-the-counter kind of places. But what they were selling was what they called video nasties, horror movies. So I started looking at a lot of this stuff in LA.
It was called Book of the Dead, and that was its first screenings in Michigan, were as Book of the Dead. They came out to Hollywood and tried to sell it to studios out here. In most cases, they couldn't even get people to look at it. New Line made them an offer, but the offer wasn't very good. No money up front at all, and worldwide rights in perpetuity.
First saw The Evil Dead at a thing called the American Film Market, which happens in Los Angeles once a year, where American independent filmmakers try to find distributors for their films.
AFM, they showed trash. I mean, in the early days, it was really trash. It was garage band kind of movies. It was real gonzo films. Stuff that really mainly was seen by people at home on their own while they're sharpening their chainsaws.
It was my first visit there with my partner, Stephen Woolley, and he had seen it and came back to tell me very excitedly that he'd seen this terrific horror picture that had like all the elements and was bloodier than anything he'd ever seen before.
And I watched the picture, and first I was quite startled at the graphicness of the violence. It was a little scary. It was like, oh my God, that, you know, really was sort of hitting these ghouls with iron bars. But then after the ghouls were being hit continuously for a few times more gratuitously and more grotesquely than normal, you began to see the humour of it. I was also struck by how superbly well filmed it was. Especially the camera work, and especially the editing. And the sound effects. There's a beautiful shot that goes across the rafters, and as it passes the two rafters, for no reason whatsoever, it makes a noise. So it goes across these rafters and it goes wah, wah, wah. It's absurd. It's a sound. It's making the sound of a camera passing an object. I rushed out to buy it and was confronted by this old guy called Irving Shapiro.
He had been in film distribution since the 1920s. Among the films he distributed over here were Nanook of the North and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
He had actually sold Battleship Potemkin in the 30s. This guy was a really old guy.
And he looked at their picture and said, "You know, boys, it isn't Gone with the Wind, but I think I can make you a little money." The first thing he had them do was to change the title from Book of the Dead to The Evil Dead.
And he was quite taken by my knowledge of cinema, my knowledge of films, and the fact that I was respecting The Evil Dead as a piece of filmmaking and not as a piece of schlock. He named a price. I went to Nick and said, okay, I want us to buy this horror film, The Evil Dead. Nick went to see it and was duly horrified.
It made me jump, it made me laugh. It frightened me insofar as a 30-year-old adult can be frightened by a film. You know, Upward Chainsaw Massacre, but had a sense of humour and had great camera work. I mean, it was great, and Met the director, who was like 3 years old and was a wonderkind of this, that and the other sort, who was Sam Raimi.
And I was very young. I started that company, I started Palace, I was 24 or something, 25. And this guy was younger than me. I was heard of that there was to be somebody younger than me making a film which I thought was made in such a professional way. I think he was 22 or 23. And he called me sir, which was kind of slightly irritating as well. I have to say, you know, I don't like being called sir, but he insisted on calling me sir and insisted on being incredibly polite and not sweary, show-offy. You know, you'd have expected some video buck to have made the film with full of confidence and vigour and aggression, and not at all. Sam was very sweet in a kind of disarming manner. I mean, you really could take him home to your mother. I mean, it was the loveliest man.
And when we met Sam Raimi, the director, and Bob Tappert, the producer, you know, we realised also we had in them people who would be great to promote this film.
The other most influential person in getting Evil Dead known was, in fact, Stephen King. King met Sam, at first thinking he was a busboy, and then saw the film, and King says, it blew him out of the back of the theater.
We had a very specific idea about the kind of campaign we had. I used a guy Graham, never done a campaign in his life, a horror film, sent me some things just as a, you know, off the top. I'm at art school.